Welcome with this special international movie friends series with Koen on my right or left, how you want to see it, and me, myself, and I, Sven Driesen, also known as a sports journalist here in the Netherlands, and Koen, known as a sports documentary lover, as I may assume. No?
Yeah.
Yeah. This special IMF series goes about the widely criticized, criticized positively, but also a bit negatively, Netflix ESPN series The Last Dance from Michael Jordan. No, not from Michael Jordan, but about Michael Jordan and his 1990 Chicago Bulls dynasty, ruling the era in the NBA, winning 6 NBA titles. Quite a big achievement, which is being discussed a lot, I have to say, Koen, with us via WhatsApp groups, and that was not the right way to do a proper discussion.
Not the right way. No, exactly. Yeah.
And then we started, the discussion continued all worldwide within media, within social media, and then we thought, well, let's do an IMF session about this Last Dance.
Exactly.
And we want to coordinate this discussion with 4 theses we formed together, really democratically.
Exactly.
And well, we have to admit, in the beginning of watching this series, I think the discussion between us was rising high. You were further in viewing episodes than me.
Yeah, exactly.
When I watched the whole, when I finished watching the complete series, I became a bit more less edgy, I would say. But then all the news came out, so I think there's still a lot to discuss.
Okay, before we start the thesis, we're gonna show you what it's all about. So let's see the trailer.
Look at that. That's waterproof color right there. That's waterproof.
Our biggest challenge is us.
I am cursed with this mentality of competitiveness.
Competition was an addiction. Every day was a battle.
Dennis, get up here.
Boom. You don't hear it, see Dennis for 48 hours.
No matter what we did, it seemed like it was a story.
Scotty was being selfish.
When the trust is broken, it's sort of shocking.
I never hated Scotty. 6 championships in 8 years.
We were the greatest team ever.
What time is it?
I'm gonna ridicule you until you get on the same level with me.
That man get a free run with me.
It was his team.
My mentality was to go out and win at any cost.
Extended version trailer you're watching.
Yeah. The very epic version also.
We want to keep this excellence going.
Unbelievable.
Once you reach the top, where do we go from here?
At some point, the team is not going to meet the expectations.
I like the way he thinks.
What time is it? Game done.
Not a good day for Michael Jordan.
Pippen is now demanding a trade.
The expectations are certainly high.
Come on, think positive, man. Yo.
In the post-game locker room, the word I heard most was adversity.
Have you learned to deal with that yet?
Take it easy, guys.
The only question, how long can it last?
The most famous man on the planet is here.
Okay, everybody.
What time is it?
Yes. So
All right.
let's start with the first thesis, Sven. What is the first one that you came up with?
Yeah, the third thesis. Here he goes. The Last Dance loses on impact, while the most part of the story is pointed to the story of Michael Jordan and gave less space for the other players' role within the team achievement. Koen, agree or disagree?
Well, the funny thing for me is I didn't have time to finish the last two till yesterday, so I watched the last two episodes yesterday night, and my opinion changed almost a bit because I was very like, oh, this is really good, high praise, like everybody. And when I saw the last episode, I was a little bit disappointed in the ending, the first part of the last episode, because it was really building up. The beginning was a bit slow, and then it really took me into it. And when the last episode started, I expected already I expected something more epic, or already, of course, the outcome if you know the story. But in that episode, I still like the ending in the end. So that's something later to talk about. But regarding this thesis, it comes down to in that episode, I also realized, even if they do show the background story a bit of Scottie Pippen, for instance, of Dennis Rodman, of the coach, Phil Jackson, of the small guy, his name was Kerr? Kerr, yeah, exactly, Kerr. Yeah. I liked his backstory a lot. That was shown in the last two episodes. Very impressive. So it made me wonder, maybe they should make one or two more episodes, that they won't, but I would like to see more about this stuff. So, of course, the thing is, that's the strange thing. I want to know your answer on this, your opinion, but it's called The Last Dance. So it's about literally how Phil Jackson wrote, guys, the team for this season will be The Last Dance. We're going to do it one more time. We're going to show everybody we're the best. And then it should have been more about the Bulls than only Michael Jordan. Because the documentary is not called Air Jordan or Jordan or whatever. So for me, I don't think it loses the impact of the story or the quality of the series, but I think, they could have dug some more time into. I think the name is wrong compared to what they wanted to achieve, because we know that Michael Jordan was the only one that arranged for this recording of every season, because he wanted something to do with it in the end. Which means that it makes sense that the story is more about him, not only because he's the most famous one and everything, but they shot most of him. But then they should have called it differently, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I disagree with this thesis because they took a lot of time. If you have 10 episodes, and three, maybe four of them were introducing other characters than Michael Jordan. And I think in the beginning, that was also my critique on the series, that I found it was really hard to get in touch with the story, because every episode was introducing this, introducing that one, and they took a lot of time to introduce a person, which they did with a clue, because they also explained what was the impact of this person on the Bulls' success. with Rodman being this unmissable defender. Scottie Pippen missing the first season half in '97. Kerr with scoring this last shot like Paxson. Of course, the coach and of course Jordan were also introduced. So I think no, I don't think the director missed a chance with building up other characters, showing this is a team achievement. Of course, the most attention goes to Michael Jordan because he was the extraordinary talent, the leader of the team, etc., etc. So if I can, in this case, I think he did quite a good job.
Okay.
But maybe he missed the chance to. But maybe we come there later on. But all the critique that shows up is that they are a bit one-dimensional portrayed, and some of them have critics afterwards. Scottie Pippen.
Let's get to the critics maybe later in this. This
we go later, but when you get critics, I always think, well, then there's not something done right, because Scottie Pippen was interviewed really long. He was like in every episode he had a quote, and he was not happy with the result. So then there's something wrong.
Yeah, let's get later to that. I want to react on what you say. I agree with almost everything you say regarding this thesis. The only thing that I would say is you are right when they do introduce at least I think 5 characters in the end with a longer introduction. They also have, of course, a small part of Magic Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. And the guy they hate the most, he wasn't allowed to go to the Olympics. That was the best part for me. But
Isaiah.
Yeah. I saw an interview yesterday on I think Good Morning America or something, and it was Scottie Pippen, and he also said like we just hated the guy. He's just like he still has the same opinion, which is very impressive. The only thing I wanted to say is that they do introduce certain characters to a certain extent, which is, in my opinion, when it comes to, especially when it comes to Kerr, which is very nicely done, because he had a lot of comments in every episode, so you wanted to know more about it, and I did it a bit later, which was nice for me. But the thing is still that I missed, and I do agree with a bit of this thesis, is that the footage shot backstage and off the court was 90% meant for Michael Jordan, I think. They use, of course, some stuff from Dennis Rodman when he goes out and does things, but I don't think that the footage there is not used it's not made by this director, by the film crew. Most of that is just used from like they saw that he was with Hulk Hogan on WWE, or he was in Vegas and all that kind of stuff. So I think that they missed an opportunity when it comes to this to show also in the backstage in the I don't think there was any footage of Kerr in the dressing room, for instance, after a match, or how he goes home, those kind of things, how they talk with each other. Then it's mainly Jordan with the security guys, sometimes Pippen, the coach, and the press. That's about it when it comes to off the court in the building,
So you thought with saying this, it loses on impact that they did not decide.
The thesis is a bit strong.
To focus more on different players behind the scenes by then.
When we started this discussion, you said from the start, because you called it a documentary with too much talking heads, and if you see only the first episodes, I can agree with you.
I have to explain this to the viewers now. Yeah, we had a discussion. I watched 3 episodes, like the 3. Well, let's say for me it were 3 prologues. I don't know how you explain. Yeah. 3 pre-stories before the real story was starting. They were introducing the characters, and by then, the footage I was looking forward to, the backstage footage, of the season 97-98 was not used much. When it was used, it was there were no scenes, so it was like 100,000 people being interviewed, giving quotations, and all the shots were like entourage. So they were not showing anything unique. They were showing a lot of matches, like game material, which for me is not.
It was a bit like a trailer, actually.
Yeah, and like when you show a lot of the game, the matches, you don't show anything new. So that was for me. I thought, okay, if this is going on like this, I'm really unsatisfied. Yeah. Later on, it came much more. They showed a lot of scenes. I think episode 4, 5, 6, 7 were the best for me. Was the core part of the series. I also was a bit agreeing on you that the last episode was a bit of a unsatisfied ending. Of course, predictions. You know how it's ending, and but how they told the story was also a bit predictions. You know, they. Yeah.
You would have expected a bit more epic, also the way they would portray those 5 games. You know, it was a bit too. It seemed a bit too fast somehow.
Yeah, or they maybe decided to show and to make all these games important, like half the semi-final Eastern Conference, the final Eastern Conference, and then all the matches of the NBA Finals. They made them all really important.
Yeah.
But the consequence of that they showed a lot of game material, like a lot of matches, and not a lot of quotations anymore about that period. Well, so I'm now maybe sounding hypocrite, but there I wanted to hear a little bit more interview.
I fully agree with you. I was missing. That's why it didn't become epic, because you miss a bit the depth, because the whole show is about it's The Last Dance, the name of the freaking miniseries, and then it is The Last Dance is happening, and then you don't hear, it was really epic with Scottie Pippen, his injury, had to go back, he came back like he would never see this in a football match. Ronaldo coming back.
That was crazy. Yeah.
And also, I don't even want to talk about doping, because if you see what happens there, you realize a lot of weird things must happen there. But
especially on that example of Scottie Pippen being injured, I would have heard more in-depth interviews about what were you thinking?
Exactly, yeah.
Your dream was collapsing in front of you. Michael Jordan, how were you feeling that Scottie Pippen was falling from your side?
But it
was not like
the
gave there were a bit not
a bit thin. A bit thin.
Yeah.
Okay, so we both agree that the first thesis is not holding up. For you, not at all. And for me, it was just what I wanted to explain. What I said is like, even if they do introduce some characters, I do think that based on that they shot it at the time, one thing, also what you said in the beginning of the discussion we had between ourselves, that you said like, it wasn't uniquely shot, it was shot with a lot of footage, and after that they used the footage to make a documentary, which is not always maybe the best way to make it, which I can understand, because you have no vision in that moment. Of course you cannot have a vision then.
I think they were just deciding, they knew kind of, it can be the last season of Michael Jordan. Let's put a camera on this guy 24/7. Oh, well, that's a good decision.
No, of course. And so that's why this thesis holds up for me a little bit still, is like, because you only know about 5 or 6 guys from the Bulls. All the other guys you see on the field, half of them you see maybe 1 minute of footage of them, but you don't even know their names, which is kind of a bit strange, you know?
Well, you had the guy Bill. I lost his last name.
Yeah, the Croatian guy or Czech?
No, yeah, Kukok. And so they were introduced as well. But I think that's also a good decision, because otherwise if you want to tell everything,
maybe you need a double season, exactly. Yeah,
you're gonna lose the storyline as well. So I think that was a good decision. So the conclusion, we were both disagreeing with the thesis that it loses.
Okay.
Effect. Yeah.
Let's go to the second one. Let me see which one we do.
Hear it.
Okay, The Last Dance was too much about sport and not enough about the human Michael Jordan. What do you
Completely agree. Yes.
Yeah.
Or it can be that Michael Jordan is how he is. For me, a non-sympathetic, super top athlete, but not really interesting character, I have to say. Well, if you're really interested in a top athlete within on a leader position, knows how to play psychological games within the team to get the best out of each other, yes, then it's interesting. But I don't think he was really 100% honest and open and transparent
for sure.
in this documentary. We all know now the producer, the production team was his own management. They had the last word in making decisions about the end result, which is never for a documentary like this, which is being stated as a historical up and top research series where they want to show down how it was and how it went. They interviewed loads of people, AAA guests like Barack Obama, for example. And then it's a bit of pity that you can't make the decisions objectively 100%. And you see that Michael Jordan is still
in control.
Horace Grant, Isaiah Thomas, maybe also the Jordan Rules, that book. That was Horace Grant. Yeah.
I think we don't know if it's Horace Grant.
He was not 100% transparent in that, and I think Scottie Pippen was also not always 100% transparent or not always confronted, or maybe he was, but it was not put in because Scottie Pippen was also angry about the end result, which I think, how is that possible? Because he was.
Yeah, he's only angry about one part, that episode that he didn't want to play. That's the only thing I heard he was angry about. But actually, if you look at the last episodes, first of all, it's true. Second of all, they don't say it in a really bad way. They don't make him like a money wolf or something, because in the end of the show, they also see what he does for the team in the end with his back, So he comes out of it kind of okay, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
as a sportsman, he comes out great, of course, because he's a legend. But
yeah, well, for me, it shows a bit the difference between Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen can't be this, I think, this leader type. Could be. It would not happen to Jordan.
True.
And Pippen needs always Jordan, and Jordan in the end needs also Pippen, but a little bit less. And but to go back to the thesis, not enough about the human Michael Jordan, too much about the sport. I agree, because, for example, his wife was not in. Maybe there were reasons. Okay, can be. But his children were. His mother was. His father was.
But his children were very little, only in the end a little bit.
Yeah, okay, but still. And I missed the kind of, but that's what I say, maybe he's not that interesting enough, that he was just 100% focused and busy with sports, and he still is. And you see, he still can't let go several things because he's not transparent. And what I missed out a bit, but it was being told, and he was honest about it himself. He's not the type that is really outspoken about other things than sports. He's just a sportsman, and he doesn't want to be involved
in politics,
or human rights, or Afro-Black community themes. So that I found a bit, they tried to point a little bit the story on that. Also, that he was in his youth, he had experiences with discrimination, but it was not really worked out. It was not
not at all. No, exactly.
Did it had him in his life, in his career. So when you talk about this thesis, it was not enough about the human Michael Jordan, but maybe it was everything there was.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I don't know. What do you think?
The thing that you said, of course, but without even knowing it, you could already seen from the start, and also by knowing, like, a big sporter like that would never make a documentary that he talks about, like, he's involved in so much himself. That means also he has most of the times they have full control, which is, of course, what you said, it's never good. So that I'm also disappointed in that fact, but I don't agree with this thesis because I think Michael Jordan, for me, he became a way more interesting character due to the fact that I didn't know so much about him, and still you don't know so much about him now, but that makes me even more interested and more curious because his bullying almost till a certain level that is not acceptable, like we know maybe from football, from what we hear from Zlatan Ibrahimovic, for instance, which is also a guy that he always goes to war on the field.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, like, he bullies his teammates till yeah, for sure there are a lot of teammates he played with that hate him. The same with Michael Jordan, I think, and that was surprising for me because I didn't know that. I didn't know enough about the man, and so for me he became way more interesting. But yeah, because the problem is because he has most probably full control over this series in the end, or a certain amount of control. He doesn't show you his. He doesn't show you what he doesn't want to show you. No, he only shows you what he wants to show you. And but so till a certain point, it also annoyed me because I also thought, is he more interesting or deeper than we see, or not at all? But then we saw the last episode, so it's a spoiler alert for people that want to watch it. Don't listen now further. 1 second. In the end of the last episode, you see that to finalize the dynasty of the Bulls, of this team that was together with Phil Jackson, he did again one of his rituals because Phil Jackson was famous for these kind of things. He was really involved in things with the Indians. He liked the kind of stuff, which is really cool. I liked it. And the team building, he put a coffee barrel in the middle of the dressing room or whatever, and they each had to write down their feelings and thoughts about everything, and then put it in the fire. And then even Kerr described, holy shit, like Michael Jordan wrote a poem, out of the blue, and they said it was pretty deep. They didn't say what he said exactly, and Kerr was a guy that was bullied a lot by Michael Jordan till he reached a certain level of, okay, I can go to war with this guy, and they trusted each other. And also Kerr had the balls to step up and say something back, give gas back to the guy. Mm-hmm. And he realized, like, okay, there is more depth to this man, but he just doesn't show it to us. And that for me was a thing that, if you see also how Michael Jordan is now, like he's a tycoon in that sense, he makes more money than anybody that is famous. He makes more money than any sporter that you know. He makes more money than Paul McCartney. He makes more money than those guys even. And he owns a basketball team, of course, or majority, I think. And he has Air Jordan with Nike. So he reached a certain level that also, I think, at that level you don't want to give an insight too much, maybe. And so I don't think it's only from the man how he was. I think it also has to do with the level you reach as a professional. That's also why we see him always with a cigar. He also enjoys it, of course. He likes to be that tough guy with I'm this rich man with a cigar. And
of course, I have to say, because the only tough guy is Dennis Rodman.
Yeah, true. The only really tough guy is Dennis Rodman. So for me, it's like. For me, he became more interesting, but you don't see enough from him. So I agree that you see it like, there's maybe not nothing more, and I honestly believe there's a lot more to this man. And for me, it was a shame that you don't see it. So no, I agree that in the end of the piece that it was too much about the sport and about the winning mentality of this man, and it wasn't enough about the human. And I do believe it could be more about it if someone else made it and he was open enough. I think there is a lot to tell.
Or it was a decision of the director because it was the last dance.
Can also be.
Rules. It was about.
Can also be. Yeah.
This last season. That was the red line.
It's not a biopic, of course, about Michael Jordan. It's about
Michael Jordan himself. No.
Yeah.
So, but if I have to say which series made the most impact, it was the episode about losing his father, become champion on Father's Day, crying, screaming on the floor in the locker room. I think that was, for me, the most touching episode.
Yeah. And then being crazy enough to pull off almost joining the Major League Baseball because his father always wanted him to play baseball. It was also, I never knew that. Maybe you as a sports journalist knew this, but
no, I also.
And that I read more about it. The New York Yankees coach at the time and the Stanley scouts, they said that if he would have continued one more year, he would have reached the top of baseball. Imagine. What for sportsman that guy is, really.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah. I think he's one of the best athletes ever of all sports of all time. Yeah.
And I think we both had the same answer to why. So I will start with it. Maybe you agree with me. I have never seen any sportsman that always can put on the button and always switches on. First of all, because we don't see in every episode, we don't see the whole season. So maybe he had bad matches that we don't know about because you don't see those. But the important matches, every famous sporter that we know, when it comes to Formula One, to football, to tennis, right, the big ones, Federer, Ronaldo, and Lewis Hamilton, they always have bad days in important moments. And Michael Jordan, in his whole career, never had a bad day in important moments, which is impossible,
That's really fascinating about this documentary. You can see really how good he psychologically.
You can always turn it on. You can always find something on someone to get motivated from. Like he has. And then he says, "I put you on the list." Like you're like, "Fuck, my God, this man."
That's incredible, and that's well, that's really good shown, and I think like the sport element is really depth out, really precise, really almost perfectly, I would say, with all this archive material, but also showing really specific moves or technical skills of several players on several moments of matches, and they were discussing with interviews, which can make a difference in the game, which can make a difference.
The famous triangle,
the triangle, but also the interceptions and giving the pass or shooting. Deciding
especially the last moments of the game, with 5 seconds left.
And a lot of things are just consciously chosen by the athletes or thought through. I think that's really showing how good this team was, and that's really good about the documentary. The third thesis is, if you want to know what is a winner's mentality, then this documentary series is the answer on your question. Koen.
For me, this was. I've seen. I've read a book about the winner's mentality of. I don't know what the title is. I have it somewhere, I think, in the closet. But no, there's a book about the winner's mentality written by a German writer, and it focused mainly on German sporters. For instance, Michael Schumacher, which is also. They say that in the Formula One world, this guy was the best, but he wasn't the fastest. He didn't have the most natural raw talent, which means the speed. But this man also, he just had a winner's mentality. He could never break. And now, because of course he's not capable of doing any interviews anymore because of his health, a lot of stories now come out from other famous drivers that drove later with him, also world champions like Nico Rosberg and Hamilton and those guys. And they say there's always in every sport there's one guy that stands out, and it's what I liked him a lot in I think it was the last episode. Someone said, I think a ESPN reporter, he said that Michael Jordan was the only person that you will ever know that is always in the present. Like there are people that go to India or God knows where in Asia to meditate for 20 years to find themselves and be in the present. And this man was always in the present. He always knew exactly how to do it. He knew how to turn himself on, because it's the same with anything in life. If you're good at something and you're good at something for years, after a while, you can get used to it. You can get bored by it, and you need to find motivation. And I think Michael Jordan, if you hear him, he's always busy with finding something to put himself on fire again, and he finds it in the smallest little rivalry between guys, or with Malone, that he was the MVP that year, '97, instead of Michael Jordan. For Michael Jordan, was like, okay, you're the MVP? Okay, we'll play together, And it's a bit, if you also hear him now talking about it, it sounds a bit childish maybe, or a bit like a spoiled little brat, but that's how it works. And this is, for me, I think it's the best example of the winners mentality you can see in a documentary. What do you think?
I agree as well. Like we discussed before, his psychologically, physically, and technically abilities to decide a game, to stand up when it's being asked, also to stand up when it's not being asked, to decide games, decide history in the end, to make other players playing better, which I think that was really also shown really good, that he
pulls it to a way higher level.
During trainings, during talks in the locker room, challenging them to put them to a higher level, with maybe not a nice and sympathetic attitude, but
no, not at all. But in
the end, and he was also quite emotional when this was being asked.
Yeah.
He was being asked, why are you not a nice guy? Were you a nice guy? And then he was emotional. The only moment in this 10th series, Last Dance. But he was not nice because he fought, and he really believes, and it was also experienced like that he has to be a bull, like a tough guy.
Bull is a good word choice. Yeah.
So
the funny thing is, have you seen his speech on the funeral of Kobe Bryant?
Yes.
If you see that, then I think you see way more of the guy.
Yeah.
You see a very different side of him. He was like a father to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah. Because what I wanted to say, and I was not 100% sure if I now had to say, now we come here, okay. The moment he was crying in this, I think it was the 5th episode or the 6th, I don't know by heart. But being asked on this question, were you a nice guy? And then he was starting crying. It felt a bit, was it now, was he now really emotional there? Or did he want to be emotional there? To maybe...
his whole appearance on the camera in this episode, like how he's shown now at his house, is always a bit weird. Yeah, so some moments you don't know if he's playing with things or like you said in the beginning, he's telling the truth, or
he seems to be still playing.
But that's I think I think so. If for people that want to watch more about him, check out. I think it's worth. Also, out of respect for Kobe Bryant, the speech that he holds there, and also the interaction with the wife of Kobe Bryant. You can clearly see this man meant a whole lot to Kobe Bryant. He was like a father to him, like a tutor, because they used to call each other at 3 a.m. And that relationship shows you more about the person maybe than he wants to show you I think you're fully right. In this series, he is again playing with people a bit with things. But I think that's the tycoon in him, that he wants to control these things. Like he wanted to control the Bulls also in that... it's his legacy also in a way. And I heard some criticism from people that he became a guy that started to believe too much in himself. I don't agree with it if I see the series. I don't think like he's too full of himself. Like, okay, he's full of himself, but it makes sense compared to the episodes that I'm watching, I think. I don't know what you think of that.
No, maybe he is like this, and that's why he was so good. And that's why he had such an impact. So we both agree, I think 100%, that this documentary shows what is winner's mentality, and that's not something sweet or fun. It's something not
sometimes
nice.
tyrannic,
most effective, Maybe there are other examples where you have a different version of winner's mentality. That can be that you can still be a bit more sympathetic or a bit more funny, a bit less serious, a bit I would say effective.
It's but the thing I think it's hard to debate this when you can debate this about every person or every team maybe, but if you see Michael Jordan, I think it's quite hard to debate if you can do it, if he could have done it better. I mean, that's an interesting question. Could the Bulls have succeeded, you think, for instance, all the 6 championships they have and his dynasty and the legacy they had, if Michael Jordan was the same level he was, but he would have been a really nice guy with a very different approach to motivate them just by like being a friendly guy.
Yeah.
We will never know, of course, but...
I think you made a comparison with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and I think that's a really good one. And
but that man also...
They're equal to each other personality-wise as well.
Yeah, but Ibrahimovic is not always on. He has bad matches. Jordan, I never saw a bad match of him.
Well, there were also in his documentary some matches that he was not giving 100%. He was giving 100%, but it was not working out. That can always be, of course. Also with the best players, they can have not a good day. That things are not working.
Yeah, but not
on decisive moments, you mean?
Decisive moments, first of all, yes, that's what I mean. But also, if he has a bad day, he's not like stepping through a certain layer, like the certain automatic pilot level, which other sporters we know, they can have a bad day. They start whining while they're playing. For instance, football players, you see them like being really, they become little girls, you know, they're complaining about everything. They want to walk off the fields. Formula One, they start complaining on the radio. Jordan, he gives gas. And after a match also, he doesn't make a scene out of it. That's what you never saw, at least with the footage that we saw, of course. I don't know every match, of course, but no.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So for me, it's like...
he delivered.
Sorry?
He always delivered, although he was...
and that's why I think, it's a perfect example, we both agree, it's a perfect example, I think, of showing winner's mentality. But maybe also, I will go a step further, maybe even. You know more about sports than me, so maybe you can correct me. But for me, it's the best. It's a winner's mentality, even perfectionized. I don't think any sporter came to this level when it comes to pure mentality and always being there at the right moment, doing the right thing, and getting the result.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, maybe it's too big to say because it's hard to think of everything now, maybe, but
yeah, I don't
like Federer had moments he couldn't pull the trigger. Hamilton had moments he couldn't pull the trigger.
But also, tennis is a individual sport.
Yeah, of course, it's different. Yeah.
So it's also hard to compare.
Yeah, it's true. Football maybe is not the best, or.
No, I don't know. Well, it can be. Yeah, what do you say?
Yeah. Okay. Hey, should we go to the fourth pieces we have, which is going to be an interesting one? It's The Last Dance is the best sport documentary ever made. Sven.
Yeah, well, here we had a discussion about it beforehand. I started a comparison with the documentary movie about Maradona, which being published last year, 2019, from Asef Kapadia, director. Because I was really, as I said, disappointed in the first 3 episodes in the style of this documentary series, The Last Dance, where they were not using as much as I hoped for scenes from the behind-the-scenes camera of the 97-98 season. And a lot of talking heads, too many people being interviewed, to my opinion, instead of choosing for some key interviewees which
Yeah.
which you can go into deep, which you can. In the end, I understand why they chose such a variety. Maybe they chose sometimes a bit too much. I think Justin Timberlake, well, he was cool to have, but I don't know if he really added some value.
Contributed anything? Yeah, exactly.
But okay.
I even forgot about him already because I went further, of course, faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay, I think I understand why they did it, because they were like telling a story about and a time era of 20 years, more or less. So you had several people being expert in several different topics. But still, sometimes you miss a bit on specific topics, like we discussed, to go in deep. And my
there's not enough depth for some parts. Yeah, it's true.
yeah,
I agree.
my first argument why I'm disagreeing with this thesis, so I think it's not the best sport documentary ever made, is because it's discussable how transparent the documentary is made.
Yeah.
The management of Michael Jordan is the last one being responsible about the end result.
It's never good, of course.
Yeah, the film was being criticized by other main characters, like Pippen, like Grant, like also the journalist of Chicago, Sam Smith, I think was his name, who chose a really good way to express what this documentary is. Also, for my feeling, it's maybe a bit exaggerated, but that's the feeling I had after the last episode, a bit, where everything fell really on his place, and there was the music. Well, everything comes good and great. American,
it's a really American, yeah.
story. He called it. It's not a documentary; it's a series based on a true story. And a series based on a true story means we use the truth, but we create our story out of it. And this pretended, in the way they made it, to be a story, to be true, to be transparent, to be telling what happened exactly with this team. And because doing all this research to have 500 hours of archive, to have finally Michael Jordan speaking up after 20 years about this era, it's pretending you're telling how it was and how it should be, and then you should always choose an objective line and not give this responsibility to one of the people being involved, Michael Jordan's management. So I think this is one argument for me to be saying it's not the best sport documentary ever made. Second one, I made a comparison with Maradona, the movie. There's a totally different movie compared to this. It made much more decisions. The length was shorter because it was a movie.
I will surprise you now because we started different. So
yeah,
I found it better than this series.
Okay. So we don't have
I
discussion.
agree with you.
Unfortunately. For people who haven't watched it, with Maradona, they decided to focus in on his Napoli period, and to explain really the personality, the human Maradona, where the athlete Maradona was part of. And maybe it's not a fair comparison with this Netflix series, which is going about the team, but it's also going a lot about Jordan. So I still want to make the comparison.
There are some, of course, yeah.
But when you talk about style, the Maradona documentary chose to not show any talking heads. They decided to keep you in this era of the 80s where Maradona was going to Napoli, and they used also 500 hours of archive material. And all the interviews they made, the sound was under the images of the archive, which
Yeah.
feels you were always in this world.
I like it also more, that style, exactly, yeah.
For me, much more artistic, much more film, and you were emotionally much
more feel, way more
involved. Because you wanted to know, you were really, and it was also going a lot about the human Maradona and explaining why he has all these, freaky sides, really talented. You never understood him, and after seeing this movie, you understand him, and you're gonna, if you have a heart, you're gonna empathize with him. I think you're gonna see. Well, it's sad or whatever what it is, but you empathize with him, and this was not able to do with Michael Jordan because there was too many distance to Michael Jordan in this Netflix series. So you could never. It's already hard to emphasize with Michael Jordan because he's not a really sympathetic person.
No.
But when you keep this distance, and I think maybe it was also on purpose, like you explained about Michael Jordan, he's this tycoon, and maybe he doesn't want to.
Yeah, maybe. I think that could be a part of it. Yeah.
Which can all be reasonable arguments, but it's a bit, in the end, a pity to a good story. It could maybe be.
Yeah,
that's my point.
Good. No, I agree with you. I never wanted to watch. I never thought of watching the Maradona one. First of all, it wasn't on my radar, and second of all, I never had anything with Maradona because I only knew. I knew what he did with football. I knew that he played at Napoli, but I knew that he was a really like a cult hero there in Napoli. He was famous, of course, for the World Cup for the famous goal. But that's what I knew a bit in the background. And the only thing I knew about Maradona was all the bad stories, what happened. And to me, always looked like an idiot, like a clown, without being too disrespectful against the man, because he's still, of course, a hero. But so that's why I never wanted to see this. Or I wasn't interested enough to see this. And then I watched it finally now, last weekend. And it doesn't all make sense to me yet. The guy, but it's a different discussion.
Yeah.
But it's the way it's made is something that you wish it would have been made about a lot of sporters. It's so much the emotion that you miss, especially in this show. And so I think that's a way better documentary or sport documentary or movie than this series. I fully agree with that point that we had from the start. But what I do wanted to say is like I also very agree with you said. A very wise thing you said was like. What you said it from a journalist that said the quote that it's not
Sam Smith.
What did he say again? Repeat it again.
Chicago journalist. He called it a TV series based on a true story.
Yeah, that's also a perfect summary of this series, and that's also why I like it so much, the series in a way, because it's very enjoyable to watch. Especially, I'm a sports fan, but I never knew that much about basketball at all. I never watched a full match in my life. I knew Michael Jordan, and we all grew up with Michael Jordan being this super famous person, but you never knew why. Because in Holland, nobody, when we were 12 or 10, we never watched a single match of basketball, but we did have the hats of the Chicago Bulls,
Yeah, me too.
And that's why for me, exactly, Bas also, we all had. And that's why for me it was so enjoyable, because I learned a lot about how good what he meant for basketball, and I was every time shocked. What we already talked about, he's always on. I never knew he was that good.
No.
I knew they always said he's the best, and I talk about LeBron James now, of course, and Kobe Bryant was really good, Shaquille O'Neal, all those guys, but. Yeah, I think I've watched now some matches from some match footage, not the whole matches, from LeBron James, and I don't know technically enough anything about basketball, so I cannot judge. But if you see still certain moves that a man made, it's just this man is on a higher platform than anybody, and that's for me also the most interesting part about the rest of the episode. That you have to imagine this man became the richest sporter in the world. Of course, due to Jordan, due to Nike, but he also became one of the most influential people still to this day, without having in that times, and he still doesn't have this, no social media.
No
way. Imagine there was no way to promote yourself, and he also never looked for promoting himself. He only did it by playing and by the selling of the shoes some other company did for him. So he never searched the light himself. And there were also episodes, but I really wish they would have done.
He
Sorry?
had this period that he was doing a lot of advertisements and stuff, huh?
Oh, I didn't know. Okay, yeah.
During
Yeah, but he didn't do a lot of interviews or documentary, or like he never went on shows, talk shows that they will talk with him when he quit it, for instance. He never searched that limelight, you know. And that's for me also interesting that there was one episode that I think you will remember exactly, where he was in his hotel and he wanted. That was the first time he wanted to retire, and he said, like, I'm so tired of this and it's breaking me up.
Yeah.
And I really wished, come on, go now deeper, go further, show us what you really think and feel. And it didn't came, you know. And that was for me, yeah, that clearly shows he had a foot somewhere at the door, guys. We're going to show this, and that was a bit of a waste. I think this exactly the quote of Sam Smith is. I think it's perfect. You know, it could have been more, but it also, because it wasn't, it was very enjoyable and also easily to watch for people that maybe don't care so much about this kind of sport. You know, it's watchable for a lot of people, I think, because of that.
Well, I doubt that.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I doubt
Why?
it. Because it's a lot about sports. They really choose to tell the story, with the sports story.
Yeah, but it's like.
I mean, they don't really choose to tell the human factor.
No, it's true, but it's.
So
sorry,
I think if you want to have a wider audience, you have to you get a bit away of this sports topic, and you have to show more the human factor. So
yeah,
I think,
okay, but that's a different.
but I think you mean people who were not knowing so much about basketball but are interested in sports. For them, it's really good done. It's great done. It's and how, as I said, but I want to repeat, I also think it's a really good documentary.
Yeah.
And how they were telling the story of the sportive achievement of the Chicago Bulls in that period. That's being told great, but there were
the human factor or the
and as I mean what you said before, the transparency, that's a bit of a little deception when you hear afterwards a lot of people are criticizing it, and you hear the executive producers are his management, and you don't know that before. So maybe it's good to hear it afterwards, because then you watch it a bit more neutral.
No, I agree with you, but I don't. It's not that black and white as you say, I think, because if you check the criticism, it's the only criticism from his own like long-lasting team members is Scottie Pippen, and he only has criticism about he doesn't like how he's portrayed by certain things, but it doesn't mean it wasn't true. So that's not bad or wrongfully pushed. So that transparency is not the problem there. The only problem with transparency for the rest was Horace Grant. But anyway, there was a weird story with him because the whole team he was the leak for that book, you know, that was against the Bulls. So that's not a guy that I would necessarily trust his full opinion about this, with also taking a bit of salt, you know, to that story maybe. But yeah, because it's not like Kerr had a bad reaction, or Phil Jackson, or even the owner of the Bulls that doesn't really get good out of the show, the manager, Jerry Krause, I think was his name. So I don't think it's that black and white. It's not like the transparency is not that bad, I think. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I also don't want to make a too big topic out of it. I want to make clear it's a really good documentary, and everybody who is interested in sports should definitely watch it. And it's amazing to see how good Michael Jordan was. That still stands for me, and that's 100% clear, and that's 100% achieved.
I have a question for you.
I think the director, his name, Jason Hare.
Yeah.
I hope I pronounced it good. The director, he's a director being a specialist in this kind of sport documentary. So he's not like Asif Kapadia, who's more like a film documentary maker. He directed Amy, Senna, Maradona. It's a different style. So they chose to do this, to zoom in sport details that happened on the pitch, that happened in the locker room, really a lot of this kind of stuff. Yeah. And then if they want to achieve that, then they made a good decision and then a good result.
Yeah. I have a question for you, which was really in my mind since already for a longer time in this series. If you're the owner or the manager of a huge franchise and you have the best team in the world, and you know that they are aging, but if you know the difficulty of a whole season of basketball, which they play, I don't know, they play 80 games or something, and then they play all the playoffs and then the finals, and they still win with so much ease. And they clearly show that in that last season they didn't lose any of their strengths. Why on earth would you want to fire all of them then or let them go? Does that make any sense to you?
I think where's the connection? Do you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think Phil Jackson was maybe also not 100% convinced anymore that he could have the success again, or that he want to strive again for the success.
Yeah, but was it that he wanted to leave, or did the team told him after the season is done with you? Because it wasn't really clear for me.
No, that was also not 100% clear for me. Worked out. It was a bit discussed in the last episode. I think they did not went really into deep there, and that Michael Jordan was saying, "Yeah, I wanted to go on." Like, it was not really worked out that much, unfortunately. And this Jerry Krause was not being interviewed by that. I think he was anyway not so much in the documentary, although he was a lot being criticized.
Heavily,
yeah, which I think that's quite doubtful. But I think it's good to have a personality above the team who can make his own decisions.
Of course.
Against the pressure of Michael Jordan, I think. I would find that was a thing I was a bit missing. That Jerry Krause was not being part of this documentary. But why on earth would you stop with this team? I think everybody realized they did something insane, something like a miracle, and everybody.
But if you're Jerry Krause and you know the guys want to do another season and they want to try it again, and you know that there is a big chance they can do it, but also a chance they won't because they're aging. But the fans want to see it anyway, so it's you can also rebuild the team a year later. You know, what is the point if Messi is at the top of his level and Barcelona wins every Champions League and they win this year's Champions League? You're not gonna fire them for the next year already.
Maybe I don't know the details, but maybe the contracts were ending, and if they had to prolong the contracts, they had to pay a lot more salary. I don't know. I really don't know.
That could have been maybe for some of the guys that 1 year prolonging would have cost them a lot of money. Yeah, it's possible maybe. No. Now for me it was interesting. I think like these guys pulled this off, and then most of them didn't go because they wanted to go themselves, you know, like Michael Jordan retired and Phil Jackson went, I think, to the Lakers. I think he took coach for 3 years. I think he went to the Lakers, I think. And the other guys were just traded or sold. I'm like, that's still strange to me, but it's maybe a different discussion.
I have a last question for you. What kind of sports documentary would you love to being made? About who or what? I already know the answer, but...
Yeah, you know the answer? I'll say the answer then.
Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Now, what I really would like to see from people in the future, they already should start now, is even if, what we said, maybe there wasn't the best, there is no vision when you just start shooting stuff for years and then later make it into a documentary. But we see that it actually create a very good result because his documentary is not the best, maybe, but it's a very enjoyable, very good documentary to watch. So I think they started our Formula One the last 2 years to have a team of Netflix to have access to every team throughout the whole year. And they can shoot everything and do everything. And it creates also an enjoyable season. It's, in my opinion, the show they make is not that good, but it's interesting. But what I would like to see is when it comes to teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, maybe there should be more directors and people with the right amount of money to start recording footage, so you can make like amazing documentaries. You know what I mean?
Yes.
For me, coming back to what I just said, is like if they would have had footage and cameras on the most epic moments between the epic fights between Michael Schumacher and Mika Hakkinen in the world titles of 98, 97, 96. Yeah, you could have made an amazing, good documentary, but they didn't do that, unfortunately. So for me, it's also the question, like, if they want to make a documentary about Michael Schumacher, I don't think it's so easy to make, because the only thing you have footage is the footage of the race. And Michael Schumacher you cannot interview now, but you can interview, of course, Hakkinen and those kind of guys, and Eddie Irvine. But yeah, I think it's hard. If you don't, I think to make a really good one is, or you do it with really artistic way, the way they did it with Maradona, with Senna, which Senna I didn't like that much at all, but I think a lot of things were missing there. But Maradona I really did like. Yeah, I would suggest that filmmakers start shooting stuff, because you can make amazing stuff later with it, you know?
Yeah, but it's really hard to get really close to big sports teams and athletes. So that's a bit of pity, but we have to keep on dreaming.
I wanted to finish off with the only thing that we should finish it off with, I think. I won't introduce it. I will just put it. That was not what I wanted, but... It's really early days. Nice.
Yeah, this one, man.
That's amazing. The air he takes is ridiculous, really.
Yeah.
My God.
This one, the dancing, yeah.
Crazy. You know he's coming, you know you have to defend, but there's no point. Always the tongue out.
And the movement.
Yeah, bam. The level of air is ridiculous. Like, whoop.
Yeah. Amazing.
Ridiculous.
Okay. And number 4.
The old shirts also nice. The vintage. Ridiculous, man, really.
Yeah.
Boom.
Oh.
Imagine the feeling you must have.
It's what you call a rebound.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to describe it. Man was a monster, really. That one had such a long loop. Jesus. Yeah, crazy. Well, guys, that was it. See you next episode. We have a special episode about Italy. So, till then, bye.
Ciao.